Okay, folks, we're live streaming and about to be recorded. All right, welcome to the meeting. We have to wait a few minutes to get our board in place, and then we'll kick this meeting off. Good afternoon, Kelvin. Everybody have some Thanksgiving? Good.
Stay out of it. Travel. You come, I got just now it's been
This is a conflict.
do this.
Yeah.
So it's president. ERC, he doesn't go to.
He's occasionally planning commission. This
Okay.
Sorry,
Feeling
It's okay.
stressed.
How are you?
didn't tell us there was an event in the garage.
Just
Yeah.
told him.
Rudolph.
Yes.
Okay. We have our board seated. Mr. Chairman.
Excellent, thank you. This is the December 6th, 2023 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design. Present are Amanda Bart, Jeff Webb, Kelvin Yuji, myself, Joel Adrian. Present for the planning staff is Eric Schultz. These proceedings are being recorded. We ask that those who speak identify themselves for the record. We will conduct this meeting in usual fashion. We will first receive information from city staff about the application and their recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, the matter is uncontested. The board reserves the right to ask questions of staff, applicant, or others in attendance prior to rendering a decision. If, however, the city recommends against the application or there is opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested, hear from the applicant and anyone else who is in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application and open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, deny, or defer the application. The Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design has the authority to do three things. One, hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. Two, grant special exceptions, a fact-finding function of the board. And three, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54.924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate and make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum are present or qualified to vote. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district not be harmed by the granting of the variance. So with that, our first item is A1, which is just a review of the minutes from November 1st, 2023 meeting. And there is no questions about the minutes. If anyone has a motion for approval.
I move to approve.
A second.
Kelvin, for approval, seconded by Amanda. All in favor?
I am there.
I in favor. Any opposed? Those minutes are approved unanimously 4-0.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have a situation in which I unfortunately, Lee Batchelder, the zoning administrator, can't be here tonight. He has a conflict, but I consulted with him. We have an applicant that has previously deferred at their request. They would like the board to consider deferring a second time. But that can't happen on their, the protocol, they can't defer, but the board could obviously consider, and you have the right to defer applicants and items on the agenda. So if you elect to do that, that applicant would like to make their pitch as to why they would like to defer. I suggest that if you entertain that you take the opportunity to ask I thought there might be some more folks in the audience tonight, but to ask if there is an opposition to that request to defer. So it's a little bit out of order, but I don't want those particular people that are here to wait potentially an hour, 2 hours, whatever. It happens to be item number 85, Fairchild Street. So if you'd like to entertain that request, Mr. Chair.
It's open to the board if anybody has an issue. If not,
I don't, but I would like some clarification. If the applicant is if the applicant is requesting essentially deferral, so they're not making an argument about the substance, they're just saying the reason why they want to defer. Why do we need to hear those opposed to the deferral?
It was just Mr. Batchelder's suggestion because, again, I anticipated more people in the crowd. And in lieu of waiting to the end of the meeting to bring it forth, we'd allow those people to be dismissed, basically. It was his suggestion to ask if there's.
that's fine. I think I see what Calvin's saying is that
Right.
we could say why they want to defer, and if we agree to that.
Okay, that's your.
I don't have a problem with them speaking because we are a public body, but my opinion is that they're going to be speaking about why the applicant should be approved. This is not an approval. This is just a deferral. That's just my position. So, but I'm happy to entertain it, but I'm only going to be concerned with the deferral request.
Okay, that's fair.
All right, then we will go ahead and we will hear item B5
Yes.
first, which is Fairchild Street on Daniel Island. That TMS number is 275-0000-269. The zone VITC. They request a variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 11 grand trees. Request a variance from section 54-330 to allow a reduced impervious setback near the bases of 7 grand trees. Owner is A&P River Landing, applicant is Cranston LLC. And I guess I'll say is there, it goes to Eric, which is going to go to the applicant. Are there people present that are opposed to this application? Okay, we won't hear you first. We'll hear the applicant first.
Do I go over here?
Yes, that'd be great. Just state your name and.
Hi, good afternoon. Hunter Evans with Holder Properties. Requesting a deferral of this matter. You all probably recall this was originally scheduled for the agenda on the September 6th meeting. And we deferred at that time. And we are requesting deferral again to take additional time to work with our design team, including our civil engineer, and our arborist, and our architect. And to continue to work with Eric's office to work towards a positive city recommendation. So I asked Eric if we could defer as the applicant, and he said that's not allowed by the rules, and so I'm asking you all to consider a motion to allow us to defer. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So if you are opposed, you're opposed to the deferral of the application?
No, we came to speak to oppose the application, but if you're going to suggest or agree to defer it, we don't need to address it at this point.
All right. I would say that, yes, if you were here to oppose the applicant's desire to defer, we would hear you, but if you're not.
Yeah.
Then we will close the application to the public and it'll be open to the board to ask questions. And I guess I think it's great that you would want to defer to have more time to try to come up with a design that is approved probably by the community as well as, because I'm seeing that there's a whole bunch of comments. And I guess I just don't understand why he couldn't defer. It's because he deferred once the clock starts and he's got to.
It's just our protocol.
Okay. All right, so I don't see an issue with deferring the application.
I make a motion to approve the deferral.
I'll second.
All right, so motion for motion to defer, approve the deferral request. Now, when we approve this, is there a clock that ticks on the applicant again for when he has to get his application back in?
It's just like any other deferral.
At this point.
They skipped November because they weren't prepared. So whenever they feel
Okay,
they're prepared to.
all right, so all in favor of the
The
motion,
hope is that they don't have to return.
all in favor of the motion to defer?
I in favor.
Favor. Any opposed? That is approved 4-0. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, now
We'll jump back
hop
into
back to item A2. A2 is 216 Spring Street. It's the west side. The TMS number is 46011-01017. Zoned MU2, WH, and DR2F. Requested variance for section 54-327 to allow the removal of one grand tree. Owner is MCZ Spring Street Acquisitions, applicant JJR Development LLC.
Very good. So if you recall, this item was
Yes.
deferred by the board last month for further study. This is the application. Their hardship test explanation. This is the lot as it exists today. Frontage on Ashton as well as Spring. It has split zoning, MU as well as the R2F. Actually, it's all MU, isn't it correct? Robert or Jeffrey, sorry.
A portion of the back is DR2.
That's right.
And Patrick will, if needed,
Yes,
show the lot goes in some different directions, but that's a portion of.
that's right.
DR2.
My apologies. It is advertised as DR2F. So I wanted to include this because I know this came up a little bit last month, but the Height District map is a little crazy here. We have 2.5 on the far north, 3, a little pocket of 3, and then 6. This is the aerial of the vacant lot where an existing structure parking lot was demolished. This is the view from Spring Street, and the large center green tree is the tree in question. Just wanted to share this with you. This is what the lots were, and legally they were able to abandon the property lines and shorten up the existing lots on Ashton to create the lot that we have today. I just put the red dot because that kind of shows where the tree is in relationship to that structure in the rear northern property line. This is an overall site plan. Obviously, the sheet that shows the site plan for the micro unit apartment complex with its driveway on Spring, parking underneath, podium parking, and then the units above, obviously. This is a zoom in on that site plan. You can see the trees, that faint dark, that dot behind that existing house on Ashton and on the north side of the building. The heavy dark line is actually a walk. So where the crosshatch is the facade of the building, and then a walk. This is more of a graphic that shows the tree in relationship to, again, the building mass and the layout with, you know, a little community area to the east and obviously connecting to Ashton. This is the zoom in 30-inch laurel oak requires that 14-foot minimum setback for impervious construction. This is the arborist report. It was graded a C, mostly due to the lean. He states in there that it's a healthy tree. You know, over the past 5 to 7 years with the strength of the storms that we've had, there's very little or no evidence of storm damage in the crown. We question whether the lean was created by maybe wind pushing the tree, but there's no evidence of heave, wind throw. There's a root flare on the north side. That's pretty, you'll see that in the photo. And some graphics on the building. This is an exhibit. As you recall, we suggested that we stake. We'll learn a lot from staking out the building. So blue flag and red flag. So the blue flag is the most northern facade as it stretches east to west. And then that's the one-story portion. And then the red flag, that line, and I have some other photos to show, would be where the building increases in height, the step back to a second level. So the main concern is the blue line, obviously, with foundation, pile supported building, pile caps, etc. And then also a walk that may or may not be necessary, but they were proposing a walk between the building and the tree. So this is just my shot, city photos. This is my back is on the west side of the lot. I had to kind of mush down the weeds, but you can see that line traversing across to the eastern blue flag. So that's the rear property or the rear facade. Correct some tape between the two, and it's about 7+ feet, 7.5 from the base of the tree. So, you know, again, the lean, who knows whether it was just growing away from the house that fronts on Ashton due to when it was young and not getting enough, you know, whether there's really no pruning evidence on that side. It's kind of a one-sided crown, but again, no evidence of wind throw or heaving due to the recent storms. The crown, again, this is like textbook branch connections with like 90-degree branch connections versus V crotch. So pretty healthy crown. And again, the lean. So just back to the site plan quickly. I know this board has struggled with perimeter trees in the past, and I don't feel it meets the test. I think if the application of the ordinance were adhered to, it doesn't unreasonably restrict the utilization of the lot. Creative notch out of the buildings, who knows what could happen, but so, and then detriment to the public good, you know. Anyone could argue that trees are beneficial. You know, this side of the west side of Charleston has been kind of determined to be an urban heat island. So we're looking at how to green up and cool this portion of the city and what have you. So trees have benefit there. So with that said, oh, there's the final shot of just the tree from about midway on the lot, looking north. So staff continues to recommend denial.
Thank you, Eric. Applicant is present. And before you stay, is there anybody present that is opposed to the application? Okay. We'll hear your speech again.
Well, I'll try to compress the speech because we have many presenters. So Jeff Roberts for JJR Development. And tonight, after we're going to introduce Patrick Head, my Director of Development. Going to introduce George from Outdoor Spatial Design and noted land use attorney Andy Gatter, who can certainly go over the 4-pronged hardship test. As I had mentioned before, because there's a board member who wasn't here last time, we have rarely ever gone to this board because we always find solutions to work around things. To give you a little context on the building, which Patrick Head will distribute some additional visual, because I don't think the board got a complete picture of what this site is from the tax map. This was a tree that was on there. The building that we are putting there is much larger in the picture than it really is. It's probably 6 stories, about 100,000 square feet. The lot is irregularly shaped, as you'll see on the color-coded plots that Mr. Head will pass out to give you some context. This building is the only building of its kind that the city fought to recreate a home zoning classification called micro units. It is being done with no subsidy and appealing to workforce housing that is walkable to medical university and job centers. It cost the city approximately $400,000 to build a unit in a multifamily building. They are not subsidizing this. Anybody who is a workforce entity can come into this and live here at this approximate projected cost of rent, who's 80 to 85% of AMI. We are at the forefront of working hand in glove as I think one of the only private developers who does affordable housing that's subsidized for the city and puts up the capital and deals with the repatriation of that capital later. So we have an extraordinary project that is filling a missing tooth. And I think 99% of all developers who looked at this site would put a fast food restaurant here and not do it architecturally. Magnificent project, filling in a missing tooth and also creating a public good out of it. So we're just going to walk the board through the process because we don't want to create any slippery slope or precedent. And we have worked hand in glove with Eric and Lee for well over almost 2.5 decades and have rarely ever had a point of departure. But we see this obviously as friends, we see this differently, and we think we will make a very prevailing case. So from that, I just like my associate Patrick Head to go and give this board some things that are better in paper, old school, as opposed to putting it on the screen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Then I'll just.
You have an extra copy.
I do have an extra.
Maybe hand it to the one person that was opposed for her to look through and see it. So, because it's not on the board for everybody else to see. Thank you.
So just to quickly walk through the history of the site, 'cause I think there are some questions about how the lot's laid out. The first page is the initial property that was purchased for 216 Spring. That was the check cashing building. It had a cut through to Action Street that was used by various people, and the Laurel Oak was on that property. You can see in blue the rear of the site. Moving to the second page, we also acquired 2 residences at 33 and 29 Ashton. 33 Ashton was a historic house that had a twin that it was basically touching, and they were shedding water on each other and ruining each other. You go to the next page, you can see what we did was we took the dog leg of that really yellow property where the Laurel Oak is, gave that as the driveway to 33 Ashton, elevated it, moved it, restored it, and then created the rear back to the 216 property. And so this third page just shows the various parcels that were all in play. the next page shows in orange where we got to, so that's the lot as it is now. And you can see how that driveway was added. Moving on to the next page, this is the 1902 Sanborn map. It's showing you that lot has existed for well over 100 years. It's always been a flag lot. We did not create it. In fact, there was a residence on that property. And in red is 216 is dashed in. And I included the renderings again, really just to show what the building looks like. I wasn't sure if it would be in a presentation, and wanted to point out on the last image that was kind of a little arm of the site now is to remain green space, so that we didn't put any building out onto Ashton Street, which is a green space area. And then through any the project. Now I'd like to turn it over to Barbara.
Who has a superseding arborist report. Everything I have emailed, but.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to the one in the agenda. It was just updated based on a recent meeting there in our team conversations. Good evening. My name is George Schneidmiller. I am a licensed landscape architect in the state of South Carolina. I'm also an ISA certified arborist. I've been practicing arboriculture and landscape architecture in Charleston for about the last 11 years since graduating from Clemson in 2012. I actually began my career working for a large tree care company at the local branch in Charleston. I was a plant healthcare technician there, and my duties included diagnosing, treating pests and diseases and structural issues of plants and trees, oftentimes large oak trees like this laurel oak. After 2 years of working in this role, I kind of switched up jobs and began working as a landscape designer. I've been with my current company, Outdoor Spatial Design, for 9 years. I'm now a landscape architect there, and in addition to designing landscapes for residences, commercial properties, and public spaces, I also spend time working as a consulting arborist. I often work with architects, engineers, developers by identifying, measuring, evaluating, grading, and providing recommendations for the care of large trees. My work with the JJR group utilizes both sides of my career in landscape architecture and as an arborist. On jobs with them, I usually am one of the first people on site. I will take, after we get our survey, I'll take that survey and verify the identification, types and sizes of the trees, and I'll also grade the trees. And I work closely with JJR and my team at Outdoor Spatial Design to create conceptual landscape plans and detailed construction drawings that respond to my findings as an arborist. I've worked with them on many jobs and have evaluated hundreds of trees. And in all cases, our team has always taken these matters very seriously and have utilized best industry practices. The tree in question towards the rear of the site at 216 Spring Street is a 30-inch laurel oak, which Eric mentioned I did grade as a C, and that was primarily due to the lean. There is a little bit of tip dieback towards the very top of the tree, in the center of it. Other than that, it does have good structure, as Eric mentioned. Unfortunately, the lean is towards our site, and the entire canopy is on the side of the lean. Given the 30-inch diameter at rest height, which I've measured and confirmed, if you follow the city's tree ordinance, this tree would have a 14-foot tree protection zone, which is shown on that site plan. Any proposed buildings near the 14-inch tree protection zone would require
a large portion of the canopy of the tree and root system of the tree to be removed. Even if the tree was provided with industry-leading standards that I'm very familiar with and once provided myself, any development with or nearby the 14-inch tree protection zone would result in an unhealthy and unsightly tree and a poor long-term outlook. A substantial amount of time and effort has been spent by myself, our team of architects, engineers, and developers to explore all options related to this tree. And it is my recommendation that given all of these considerations, it would be more responsible to remove the tree and mitigate with new trees on the site than it would be to build a structure near the 14-inch allowed setback without requiring any variances and leaving the tree left to its own defenses. Lastly, if granted this variance, OSD would work with JJR as their landscape architects to develop landscape plans that specify stronger, longer-lived mitigation trees planted in areas where they're not in conflict with the proposed building. Where the laurel oak in question would be behind the building and not visible from the right-of-way, these trees would add greenery to the urban fabric and an improved aesthetic when combined with the proposed building along Spring Street. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Andy Gowder. I practice with the law firm Austin and Gowder here in Charleston. I've practiced law here for 37 years, and for many years, I've focused my practice on land use and local government, nonprofit formation and governance. I represent the applicant owner, and I have done for many years now. You've heard from my clients and their expert arborist, and what I'd like to do for a few minutes is review the legal test for the granting of variances. At the outset, I would observe that this factual situation is precisely the kind of situation that a variance from the zoning ordinances is meant to remedy. Despite their best efforts and through no fault of their own, my clients are confronted with a physical obstacle, which is in this case a grade C laurel oak, and an ordinance, in this case the tree ordinance, that without a remedy would prevent the owner from using their property to bring about an overwhelming positive good for the community, which is the affordable housing that Mr. Roberts described at one of the most dense urban areas on the Charleston Peninsula. You heard Mr. Head explain the way in which this lot was assembled and configured over time, resulting in the tree being in this location on this lot, preventing a building from being constructed as it is allowed to do by the city's rear setback ordinance. You also heard my client's representatives describe the exceptional efforts they went through both before and following the last board meeting to evaluate both the project itself and the impact of construction on the tree, even without the variance. And the expert arborists concluded that in either event, the tree will be so compromised that unfortunately it will not likely survive, despite the entire team making an exhaustive effort to see whether it could using extraordinary means. Lastly, you heard about the mitigation plans that the applicant has already begun to explore to plant replacement trees in a suitable location on the parcel that will provide shade, greenery, and other natural benefits that the public will be able to enjoy for years to come. Mr. Schultz is exactly right. This area is in need of a tree canopy, and we believe that the mitigation that would be required by the granting of a variance here would do a great deal to, at least on this site, enhance the tree canopy in this area. As I said, this is the classic case for a variance, and I would now like to walk you through the legal test. The chair read the variance at the outset, the test at the outset of the meeting. I won't go through all of that again, but I'll take each element in turn. Generally, with regard to unnecessary hardship, which is required in these cases, in South Carolina, the courts have never undertaken to formulate an all-inclusive definition of unnecessary hardship. And although it has been stated that the phrase should be given a reasonable construction, it is recognized that it does not lend itself to a precise definition, automatically resolving every case. The South Carolina Supreme Court, though, has established certain guidelines for determining unnecessary hardship. First, a claim of unnecessary hardship cannot be based upon conditions created by the owner, nor can one who purchases property after the enactment of the zoning regulation complain that a non-conforming use would work an unnecessary hardship upon them. Here, the owner did not create this physical condition. It exists where it exists on this lot, given the configuration and assemblage of the lots at the time and the natural location of this tree. Second, before a variance can be allowed on the ground of unnecessary hardship, there must at least be proof that the particular property suffers a singular disadvantage through the operation of the zoning regulation. Such conditions are peculiar to the particular piece of property involved. Here, these conditions are clearly peculiar to this particular parcel on this with this particular location. There isn't a similar location or an exact location or situation like this anywhere else that we're aware of. Lastly, financial hardship does not automatically constitute unnecessary hardship. However, financial hardship is not the argument that the applicant is making here. Rather, the workforce housing project of this type and at this price level, which makes it affordable without a subsidy, with the parking requirements that are in place, cannot be built if the building has to have a significantly smaller footprint to accommodate this tree. So let's go through the elements of the unnecessary hardship test. Extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property. Given the history of this parcel and its assembly, as Mr. Head described, no other parcel on this busy commercial corridor is like it, especially with its irregular shape. Further, no other parcel has a tree in such a location that would prevent construction of a structure up to the allowed rear setback. 2, conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity, and they do not. The location of this tree and the allowed rear setback is not a common condition in this corridor, filled with large medical buildings, giant parking garages, and high-rises. Third, the application would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And on this one, I'd like to distinguish this test from the test that is often stated for a taking of property. With regard to a takings analysis, that requires that no feasible conforming use for the property is possible. That is not the test with regard to variances. Variance applicants are not required to prove that without the variance, there exists no feasible conforming use for the property in question in order to show unnecessary hardship. It only needs to show the unreasonable restriction on the use of the property. And so there are a number of cases that decided by the South Carolina Supreme Court over the years that have allowed the granting of variances where there were feasible conforming uses of the property. Again, the question is not whether something can be built on the property, it's whether it unreasonably restricts the property. So in a case called Hartman versus the City of Columbia, the Supreme Court held that the Zoning Board of Adjustment had abused its discretion in denying a landowner's request for a variance to permit her to establish a child care center in her brick residence type house located in a residential district, and so reversed the BAR. And Stevenson versus Board of Adjustment of the City of Charleston, the court ruled that the granting of a variance to a church for construction and occupancy of an addition for a Sunday school was not an abuse of discretion, and so upheld the BAR. In the case of Dolai versus JEE Developers, the court held that granting a variance in an off-site parking requirement for commercial use of a beachfront lot was correctly decided and granted by the BAR. One case that's particularly helpful, I think, is a case called Black versus Lexington County BZA. In that case, the applicant was seeking a variance to allow the construction of certain sheds on the site because the business there was a sandblasting business. In order to be able to conduct their business, they had to be able to build these sheds on the site. But to build the sheds on the site, they had to obtain a variance. The question there was not whether or not something else could be built on the property, but whether or not this particular use could continue or would be unreasonably restricted by the variance. So the court said the application of the zoning ordinance would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. As the board determined, sandblasting is a normal and necessary activity in a steel fabrication business. If the applicant was unable to build its sheds, it would be unable to control the noise and fumes from the sandblasting and painting, and it would be in violation of the zoning ordinance. This would restrict the applicant from using the property for steel fabrication. And so as a result, it held that the granting of the variance was appropriate. Here, the existing zoning would allow for a fast food restaurant with a drive-through or other retail or commercial uses on the site, but that is not what the community needs in this location. What is needed is attainable workforce housing. That is what the city of Charleston has worked very hard with this owner to achieve in this location. If the variance is not granted, though, given the economics of construction, this highly desirable project cannot be built. No substantial detriment exists on the last point to the adjacent property or to the public good. I personally and my clients are strong advocates of tree protection. My clients do not routinely come to this board with requests to remove trees and instead do everything they can to work around protected trees and to add to the urban treescape whenever possible. Unfortunately, that is not possible here with this tree. The loss of any protected tree is regrettable. Here, this volunteer grade C laurel oak is in a location that will not allow it to thrive with existing and new construction all around it. If you heard from our expert arborist, the tree would be severely compromised by the construction of a building in a location that would be allowed without the variance. Further, being at the back of the lot, it could not be seen from Spring Street. There is no substantial detriment, therefore, to the adjacent property by the granting of this variance or to the community. The public good in this case is advanced not only by granting the variance to allow this much needed workforce housing, but also by the planting of mitigation trees on site that can be seen by the public from the street and that will add positively to the neighborhoods and the city's urban treescape. So in closing, I would again assert that this circumstance is exactly what variances are meant to address. To allow in a single circumstance, based on the circumstances of this particular parcel, a variance from the city's tree ordinance that will clear the way for housing that is critically needed by the city and the region. That is exactly what the city had said that it desires in its comprehensive plan for housing, and that would serve as a model for other similar projects in our community. This housing could be built without any public subsidy and is recognized by the BAR would produce an extraordinary piece of architecture and with the utilization of fine materials. I respectfully request that you grant this variance, and I invite any questions that you may have for me.
Thank you. So anyone else from the applicant? Or we need to present, or
Any questions at the end, or?
we'll ask questions at the end, I think. If there are other people in support.
Good evening. Protocol in order been established. My name is Arthur Lawrence, and I'm a resident of this neighborhood for way over 75 years and worked businessly in this neighborhood. I was a neighborhood president way over 20 years and watched this area develop. And this is one of the only developer that came in and worked with this neighborhood to make sure to help move this neighborhood forward. and he have done that. And tonight you have seen all the data. And he met all the tests. And by living here and working in this neighborhood across the city, and if you can look at 310 Ashley Avenue, and there's a tree behind 310. It's getting ready to fall on 310 and the house to the right, because years they tried to get this tree demolished, and it was turned down. They have went to livability court, and they can't find the owner. The roots of this tree is destroying Mr. Richards' fence, or they tore half of the fence down. And can't, because what happened, that all that development around that neighborhood caused a hardship on Ms. Richards and her neighbors. Because if to someone to come in there and take that tree down, it would cause a pretty penny. And if you go on 114 Cannon Street, Cannon and Ashley Avenue, there was a grand oak tree there. And the owner, they're building 2 houses on that lot. They took half of the curb. And someone demolished, took the tree down and be able so that the workers and the vehicle could be able to park in there. I don't think it came before this, so. And then when I look at this development, and we were working together with the community for years, trying to get workforce housing in this area. This is part of the medical district. It would be greatly needed. My grandchild has to drive from Georgetown to MUSC every day. And because of the cost of rent in the city of Charleston have grown out of reach. Now, you're seeing the data and you're seeing the roots of this tree and the lean on this tree. It's going to continue to go that way. And on the other side, on Ashton Street, the tree is going to keep on, this canopy is going to keep on growing. So whatever you built there, and it's going to cause hardship to build something there, and it's going to cause hardship to the neighbors on Ashton Street. Now, once that whole complete area on Haggard Avenue get developed, that tree will become landlocked in between those buildings. And look at the hardship that was going to occur to the owner of whoever built anything there. So as a community and working in the community, we ask you to please grant this request. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else present that's in favor would like to be heard? All right, then we will open it to those that are opposed, if you'd like to be heard.
My name is Caroline. Can you guys hear me? I live on 23 Ashton Street. I'm here to speak in opposition to removing the grand tree for the same reasons that I was here last time, to speak on behalf of the millions of life forms that will be massacred by its removal and the clearing of the rest of the plant animal lives that live on that lot. However, I realize that this development will proceed without regard to my bird neighbors, possums, raccoons, bogeyman, and asters, monarch butterflies, native piggeries, dozens of stray kitties, and of course the soil and root systems for the very reason each of us are alive at all. They will be displaced, most with nowhere to go, as we continue to develop every remaining inch of this wetland, and we too will be displaced in the coming decades or sooner as the ocean freeze back occurs. I am here because I will be displaced. A development undertaking of this size and this close proximity to my home will be unlivable. The noise pollution from construction only a few yards from my bedroom window is reason alone for me to leave the street. I do not know where I will go. I'm only able to afford downtown rent because of the previous tenant's relationship with the homeowner. I work multiple jobs downtown and will have to seriously rearrange my life if I am even lucky enough to find housing anywhere in Charleston. I might feel differently if this was affordable housing, but I'm a little confused because in the last meeting, it was very clear that attainable workforce housing and affordable housing are very different things. You've been clear about your so-called efforts of restoring and improving Ashton Street. However, I'm not sure that remodeling homes that turn into Airbnbs or skyrocketed rents, which are entirely unaffordable to the majority of families that have occupied the West Side for generations, counts as improvement. I suppose that it depends on what and who you value. I'll likely and so very unfortunately be removing myself from the vicinity of this street and deeply grieve my precious home of 3 years. My request is that I am provided with a timeline of this project so that I can plan my move accordingly.
Thank you. Anybody else present that is opposed that would like to be heard? There we go. Back to the applicant, if you like this.
Well, I certainly respect the citizens' opinion. And I'll leave that up to George from Outdoor Spatial Design with regard to mitigation far and above. We don't believe this applicant who rents from a nice lady who's friends of ours, Mrs. Porche, will be significantly affected by it. Matter of fact, my colleague Patrick will show you the location of this particular house and this tree in question, the great sea laurel oak, which we're proposing to mitigate with live oaks with a lot of breathing room and create canopy. The tenant in 23 Ashton Street has perimeter trees on the cutout from Ashton Street, which are trees that border that particular cutout, which we're leaving as a horizontal green development when we could have made it a vehicular access. Regardless, the Ashton Street houses, we have won countless on the Paralopoulos Award. We have sold them only to owner occupants. We have not rented anything. We have not done anything for Airbnb. We don't rent houses. We don't do Airbnbs. We sell them to owner occupants. And if somebody wants to Airbnb and move or continue to own it, we have been on that street and have remade that street and made it a great place and been participating in the fabric of West Side neighborhood for almost 25 years, working hand in glove with Mr. Lawrence, elected officials, community officials such as Mr. Community leaders such as Mr. Lawrence. So respectfully, I again respect the citizens' right to care about the community and whatnot, and I feel bad that she would feel that she's impacted. But in fact, geographically, the impact is, I think, minimal, and we are not doing anything to the tree canopy that borders on that cutout that he can look out of her window and not even see this tree whatsoever.
Thank you. This application, when we close the public, will be open to the board for questions, discussion.
I have a question for Attorney Gowder. I want to be clear, I want to understand your argument that, are you suggesting that the unreasonable hardship tests must be measured from the standpoint of what your client wants to develop? Although there may be other things that are feasible for the development, but if I understood your argument, it is we are to view it from the standpoint of limited to what your client wants to develop on the site.
I think it's a great question. I think it's really the nub of the issue here. And that's why I stressed the unreasonably restricted language and the limited cases that distinguish the variance test from the takings test, which is, no feasible use that can be made of the property. There are a lot of uses that could be made of this property.
Correct.
And so the question is this applicant in its desired use of the property being unreasonably restricted? And in a way, it's similar to the sandblasting case, the Lexington County case, where I would imagine there could be a lot of things that could be done on the property that the sandblasting company was on, just not sandblasting. And here, my client has worked long and hard with the city to obtain the approval to do this affordable housing project in the way in which it's been constructed and put together. That particular project, given the parking restrictions and other economics of that project, if the square footage were significantly reduced because the building had to be pulled so far back, it could likely not go forward.
And so your position or your client's position, modifications to the modifications which would make the project not financially viable is in contradiction with what I'm going to say, what the city has, in, for lack of a better term, approved because of the relationship with the city and the need for workforce housing.
That's correct. They would not be able to build this workforce housing project on this location.
And if your client desired to build a hotel that did not impact the tree, would you have the same position? Would it?
Well, I'm not sure that the public good argument would be as compelling, frankly, Mr. Hugie. I think that this is a unique situation where if we were trying to build a fast food restaurant, which Spring Street used to be nothing but that, as you know, and that could probably be built even with the tree. But that's our argument is that's not what the community needs. Community and the city speaking through its comprehensive plan has stated that what it needs is workforce housing adjacent to jobs. And this project is being specifically geared to housing people who work in the medical district at the salaries that they earn. And so medical techs and nurses and physicians assistants and others who work in the area could live here and walk to work, which is extraordinary and is what the city needs. That particular project couldn't be put here if the dimensions of the building had to be significantly altered.
And you may not be able to answer this question, but I am sensitive to, I apologize, ma'am, I don't recall your name, but I'm sensitive to a question about the difference between workforce housing and affordable housing.
Sure.
And so, if you or one of your team is able to address that, because I am sensitive to affordable housing.
Sure, and affordable housing often is referred to folks that make less than 80% of AMI. This would be 80 to 120% of AMI. But it's, again, without a subsidy from the city of Charleston. This is market rate, and it's able to be market rate at these rental prices because of the economics of the size of the units and the economics of the project. But it has to be of such a scale that there can be enough units to justify it.
Mr. Yuji, if I can just amplify that because I understand what you're going. Sometimes that term is unusually used. This is attainable housing without a subsidy, as opposed to affordable that is subsidized from the city. And this particular zoning classification is so unique. The city went through city council and attaboys and attagirls on the approvals that it was so ingenious, because as opposed to a mixed use MU2, which we developed in the city, its parking ratio is 1-to-1 with some bonus for retail. This parking ratio, because of its walkability and the fact that we're over the density, is one space for 4 units, not one space for 1 unit, because of its proximity and location to a workforce. So any shortening of this building would take away spots, but would be at a multiple of 4-to-1. It just couldn't be built and serve this purpose of a public good without one dime of city subsidy. We just finished a project on American Father Grants. We built for the city that had stymied the city for 15 years. And Ms. Brown just returned a check coming under budget for a subsidized project of $210,000 to council. And we finished it in 8 months. We are at the forefront of trying to come up with market-based solutions to fulfill the city's comprehensive plan and try to cure an acute housing crisis. And it can't be done just with subsidy. It has to be done utilizing private sector ingenuity for the public good with civic-minded development teams that know how to do it. Also creating a magnificent piece of architectural art that's in pigmented zinc. So to create this, we had to thread the needle. How do we satisfy the BAR? How do we put 80-foot pilings down to the marl? How do we make it so it's actually workable and functions to fulfill the city's comprehensive plan to try to just a micro solution of the housing crisis? And we did it for that one dime of subsidy.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm, and this is not a question, it's more of an evaluation. I believe this Amanda Barton asked during the last presentation whether or not this project could be completed without the removal of the tree, and I believe the answer was yes. So I'm just trying to, and I know it wasn't just a simple yes. I know there was more discussion, similar to what you're saying now. But I think I have a better understanding.
We studied in all due respect, out of respect for the process, this board, Mr. Schultz, Mr. Batchelder, and trees up north, which I think the arborist had said in all the times he worked with us, we try to do best practice. We basically took this tree to the Mayo Clinic and figured every way we figured to do this project and work within the confines of the existing tree, putting it in intensive care, giving it the best. But we looked at it, studied it with our engineers, our architects, the development team, the arborist team, and the tree would have an incredibly poor chance of survival. But we tried. Spent an enormous amount of time and effort, the entire team looking at how to save it. So our motivations are very good in that regard.
Any other questions, Colin?
No. I don't see.
George, if I could ask a question of you, the site plan that's up there, so if the tree is removed, the mitigation on a Laurel Oak area.
75% of the DBH is lost.
Okay. So other than that strip that's fronting Ashton, that's the only place mitigation trees are going, right? Or is there another spot I'm just not seeing? Because clearly it's not going on the back, because that just puts us in the same position that we're in. Smaller tree eventually is going to grow into the building. There's no room left side, front, right side.
Yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you're in the process of acquiring.
We have multiple spots that we could put the tree that would treat the mitigation trees that would be viable.
What, I'm sorry if I can interrupt, also Eric, landscape requirement for the development. Sorry. What's the requirement that has to, there trees that have to be put on the property? Is it,
So
because these would be in
we
addition
would
to
do this
those.
as multifamily against multifamily. So there's no let me go back to my zoning map.
While he's looking at that, I'm sorry, it just,
And we have a more resolved site plan that Patrick can.
Well, you know, the site plans particularly have called for read.
so as he's looking at that, maybe I'll ask the question. I understand that parking is an issue. So I'm looking at the 3D. I certainly like, there's this large structure, it steps down before it gets to the residential on Ashton. Looks like there's a large deck running along the back and the backyard. If that deck isn't there,
It's not a deep deck, and that's just over the top of the parking garage.
okay, I mean, that's not looking, I would say it's gotta be at least 8 feet.
It looks, it's the rendering is, deceptive is not the right word, it's unintentionally not as informative as it could be if it was looked at in plan.
I think maybe if you look at the triple window or door,
There you go.
Is that
It's
your
the size of
fire
that
exit?
window door. You've got the walkway. With access to these units. This is the top of the podium of the parking. So any movement of that wall to remove that deck removes the parking below it.
All right. I don't know, I guess the parking have to be covered. Because you can have your going down, cover, and last spot is gravel, pervious, tree has a chance to live. Last two cars are just not under parking, undercover. I understand the parking restraint, but I also look at this and I think surely a small section could have been carved out, that tree could remain, and it could be built. The tree is so close to that rear property line, and then I look and I think, okay, where do the mitigation trees go? The hardship test, that last item detrimental to the neighborhood and the public good. I lived in one of those houses that backed up to it. That tree canopy that's there blocks the entire building you're putting up from my back of my house. There was a picture, cycle through, Eric, maybe there was a picture that you took. I don't know, it seemed like there was the one where that canopy. Sorry. There we go. Look at that thing. This tree's massive. And if I'm living in those houses that are backing up to this new construction, I'm not seeing anything but my tree, and I'm getting peeks through. And I'm torn because yes, I want the workforce housing there. I want this project built. But in my heart, I gotta believe that it could have been done keeping that tree.
Could I speak to that comment? So I agree that in that photograph, that almost looks like it would be an A tree. And I would say that that's a specimen tree and we need to do everything we can to keep it. If you go back from looking at this tree from this angle, unfortunately, a lot of that great canopy, even if we follow the city's 14-foot ordinance, which I think most developers would to make the most of that land, a different team would say, okay, we can be 14 feet from that tree. Let's cut all of those limbs that you see in this photo off. This limb gets cut off, that limb gets cut off. You leave this portion of the tree, which is the least healthy portion of the tree. These neighbors over here do not have a magnificent canopy anymore. I don't think as an arborist that tree is going to be healthy. You wouldn't see it from Spring Street because the 8-story building is in the way anyways. And then I think the question was down the road. Now we have a hazard tree that needs to be removed and there's all these buildings in the way. So I think we studied all of that and we felt that it was more responsible. Like even if you did lose 2 parking spots and you went 14 feet, I think you'd need to be 30 feet away from the tree, which makes it very difficult to build anything that's not a fast food restaurant on that lot. So we thought it would be a more responsible, a better arboriculturist practice to, I love trees, but to remove that tree now and plant a tree that will live longer than a laurel oak, live oaks. There is room on the right side of the site for green space, and you would even see that from Spring Street. I know that neighbors will see that tree, 4 or so houses, but how many people drive down or walk down Spring Street every day? They're not seeing this tree if it's behind an 8-story building, but they would see our mitigation trees on the right side of the site.
Right, we could put Eric, sorry, the site plan up again.
And we don't have any documentation of support from the property owners at what number are they? At number, what is it, 31 and 33? 31, 33, 35.
No other letters of support were submitted or any comments.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify one thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Roberts. But so just a minute here, sorry. Under the table of parking, efficiency units, micro units. Parking's 1 per 3. I think you quoted 1 per 4 on the table. That's correct. One per 3.
My apologies. I
1 per
misspoke.
3. And then it's kind of new to me. MU is a district in which if they were to go clearly with the AMI, they would have to enter into restricted covenants and what have you. You're not doing that on this particular project.
I think the two other board members who aren't here, we got into a discussion last time and they said, what is the approximate rent here? And I gave them some examples.
Right.
This is unsubsidized, so a studio is X. This is probably somewhere around 35% less than a studio apartment put in the stream of commerce at its market value. And young people, it's really geared for a younger workforce who has to drive out to Ridgeville every day and spend 3 hours of their life in their automobile with a $500 car and insurance payment plus gasoline when their job is right across the street. And this is ready at some point for signalization right on Courtney, right at Courtney Street. It's in front of a transit stop. And the city thought so much of this particular plan that it went right through city council, as Patrick and I assisted in writing this legislation. And it was a market-based solution that fits the comprehensive plan to a T. We do things with Rihanna and the Department of Housing Community Development all the time. And we write white paper for the city council, the planning commission on market-based solutions on trying to, because you can't subsidize your way out of this. So we did the best we could threading the needle. And regarding the neighboring homeowners, we are friendly with most every owner there because we sold them their house. And right at 33 Ashton, we assisted Anishi Scott at 33 Ashton and curated Patrick and I on not only the architecture, but construction. And she's a young naval officer that teaches young ladies STEM school education. And we were proud to get up here with her for the Karolopoulos Award winner for a project which we actually mentored her. So we are friendly with everyone on the street. We have sold them their things. We continue to be involved in the community association. So we are not a developer that goes in there and just suddenly leaves like some barbarian. We have been working hand in glove with this neighborhood for 25 years and did marvelous things, and we continue to be involved.
So is there an MAU or is there a contract? What limits the cost?
The market limits the cost, but in reality, so I think the use of affordable was a term of art, it was misused. I'm using the term price approachable because these units are smaller, they're small efficiency dwelling units. And part of this ordinance that the whole building has to be homogeneous, units that are no larger than 375 square feet. These will have 10-foot ceilings. They'll all be independent units with kitchens, bathrooms, and laundries, not co-living where you're sort of sharing like a fraternity house. These are made for young workforce, but there's no limit on the income you could make to get it. You could make $1 million and get this. But as a general rule from a workforce housing, we just delivered 6 subsidized houses for the Department of Housing. And the AMI was $62,000 a year. And the qualification for those were 120%. But somebody to qualify for a rent at a percentage of their income through a rental office, they would have to make somewhere about 80, the minimum would be about 80% of AMI to qualify through the rental office with no subsidy, with no programs, just from the stream of commerce. So there's no.
So I just want to be clear. So is it the market that's setting the rental rate?
In this case, the market would be setting the rental rate. There was
I apologize. I'm trying to make this very simple. So if the market rent for a studio apartment in downtown Charleston is $2,500, then the units would be based on the AMI that you're referring to, based on $2,500 market rent. Is that correct?
No, respectfully, the laws of economics, if a market based on a studio apartment, which it is, I'm not talking about the Gray Star building at Courier Square, but a normal Class A apartment, if you were to look around the corner at the West Edge apartments, let's say a studio apartment is $1,900 a month for a nice studio in a nice safe building. the projected rents for these things would probably be close to $1,400. You could barely rent a bedroom somewhere on the east side in a 4-bedroom house for $1,400.
So there's an analysis of comparable units. Because it does,
If you take a square footage adjustment for it, okay, and you can bias the 350 square feet versus a 600 square foot or 550 square foot studio, which is pretty prototypical. Nobody would pay 300, nobody would pay what they can get a larger unit for a smaller unit. So we're trying to provide a cohort that doesn't live in their apartment. They're not retirees, they're working, they're socializing. They want a quiet place to live that's very safe and fireproof and walkable to a grocery store. There's a transit bus line right in front of this building. They can walk across the street and they don't need the use of a car. So that also reduces the carbon footprint because you don't have all those cars where alternative uses would be very traffic intensive here.
yeah, I get the design, I understand, I think it's a great project, I still am struggling a little bit. I appreciate Attorney Gallagher's analysis. I'm not sure I completely agree with it, like, I get it, I think it's accurate. I'm concerned about only seeing this development from what your proposal is to put there. But I do think there's some credit, if you will, in terms of the needs of the city, which in general is not a criteria that we have to consider. And so I think that's also a bit of a hiccup, at least for me. I'm not sure about the other board members, because we have to, in our criteria, the need of the public, as I understand it, is more of the surrounding community. And what you're talking about is the city of Charleston in general. And so, not that I'm struggling with it, it's just processing that.
And just respectfully, I think the public good is in that fourth prong. I think that's where you look at it. I think it is the public, whatever public you want, however you want to define public. And not just, because it does talk about adjacent properties and the public good. So I think it's both.
Right, but the public good on Broad Street would be different than the public good on Ashton and Spring, my opinion.
Of course, it just depending on the project that you're looking at, but with regard to this project, I think the public good is the community's need, the city's need.
So if, you know, because I'm looking at this tree and I'm seeing a huge amount of its canopy being pruned.
So that's an interesting point because section 54(3)27 says that the abuse removal, if you take half the canopy, I would say that's abuse to that tree. In my opinion, you're disfiguring. It's not the best natural growth habitat of the tree because it is not symmetrical. For whatever reason, that tree reacted to the open space that was there for years, whatever, leaning away from the northern house, who knows? But that's its growth habit. And if you were to take half of the canopy off, in my opinion, that's abuse to the tree.
Well, I mean, I guess the issue comes up to, you know, if you look, go back to the plan, if you go back to the plan, regardless, if this is denied, they're gonna have to come in with a request for impervious surface within the canopy of the tree, or.
Well, it's unfortunate. The process got as far as it did with VAR.
Well, but that's
But-
constant.
But on this, you can see the kind of the outline of the canopy here, that little line, I think represents the canopy. You can barely see it. So, you know, they're at 6 stories, you know, I don't know if this height district allows by architectural merit a 7th. But if, you know, in my opinion, if we had meetings on site much earlier in the process, we would have been able to say, you know, it's a pretty good tree. Can you kind of massage the back? You're dealing with different heights here. You got 2.5, 3, and then it pops up to 6. Can you do whatever to get the number of micro units, but stay off and then create that as a wonderful courtyard for the residents.
I guess the other question I have, it's a 30-inch laurel oak, and you know, how many more years does it have in its lifespan would be a very good question. And
Right.
even if the building moves back some, you're still having to, you're still having to prune the canopy.
Well, it depends on how far the building moves back. I mean, if it's aggressive, no pruning. If they want to,
Well, we've approved things that are
If you,
much better,
yeah.
whatever.
the site photo of
For
where the red
affordable
and
housing.
the blue stakes are,
What's that?
put the site photo of the red and
For
blue
the,
stakes.
yeah, where the sod is.
And then you can look at that and also talk with us about them, they're there, so back up one.
So you want to see
Back,
that?
back, no, back up where it had that one.
So
So,
I think Ms. Barton makes a great point. It is a laurel oak. They're not as long lived as other oaks like red oaks, white oaks, or live oaks that we would propose for mitigation. And even if we don't do anything to that tree, there's a good question of how many more years is that tree going to live as it gets older? Will its condition worsen? Will its roots weaken? Will it continue to lean more? I think that it's given if you look at the very top of the tree, there is some tip dieback. I think it's, at the approaching the end stage of it's impossible for me to know exactly how old it is and how many years it has left, but this isn't a 30-inch live oak that we think is going to live for another 100 years. So I think that's a good point.
Do you have a guesstimation of how old the tree is? I'm not asking for specific, I'm just saying based on its size, its DBH in general.
Maybe 30 years old.
And what is the,
That's a complete guess.
I understand,
The growth factor depends on a lot of different.
correct, I know. Okay, and you mentioned part of your argument and part of what Ms. Barton stated is the lifespan. What do you think? Let's say it's 30 years. Let's say the tree is 40 years. What is the lifespan of a live oak?
Again, it varies. As arborists, we look for signs of age. Eric, Mr. Schultz and I have looked at it, and it does have great branching structure, and the portion of the canopy that you see in this picture looks great. I think that the tip dieback at the very top is an indication of it being towards the end of that. Laurel oaks don't live to be hundreds of years old. It might, live to be 50 years old now, but I don't know how old. I don't want to make
No, I'm relying on your expertise.
Yeah.
And so,
given the tip dieback, I believe that it is not continuing to grow, and you'll start to see signs of further decay and decline.
and you said it's a grade C.
According to me, so.
Eric, what did you grade?
So we have, a grade C shows my little cheat sheet here.
The grade A is generally a specimen tree.
Right.
A B is a healthy tree with some signs of decay and storm damage, and a C has significant signs of storm damage or decay or structural issues, which I think and Eric can correct me if I'm
Basically semi-healthy tree showing some signs of decline, which are perhaps correctable. Some diseases still show signs of growth, but has suffered significant storm damage, which.
no storm damage. But I would say, it's almost a D, which is uncorrectable, which I believe that this lean is uncorrectable. We're not gonna have, the tree's never gonna be straight no matter what kind of correction pruning you do to it. So I do think it has uncorrectable, unfortunate issues. If it had a full canopy, and it was a straight trunk, I think it would be a different conversation.
Thank you.
Last time wasn't the neighborhood president here as well as Mr. Lawrence?
She just texted me and said she had a church meeting that just came up. I can show you the text, but he affirms her continued support. And Mr. Lawrence has been the community leader in this neighborhood for, I don't know, 75 years you lived here, but 40 years you were a leader.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the neighbor, usually we put a lot of stock in what the neighborhood association's stance is.
Well, there was, in addition to this young lady, the last meeting, there was another person who was in opposition to this. I don't remember the person's name, but. I mean,
I obviously wasn't here for the discussion, but when it was deferred, usually we ask that they go back and study ways, and I'm assuming that was part of the discussion.
So
Put back
basically
that-
what, oh, go ahead.
I should put back the photo that had the blue and the red.
Yes, then we look at where the,
Look at that, how that falls.
yeah, how that vertical was.
Way. Think,
So
that's
the-
probably the most
Right.
helpful one.
the basic conversation went is have the building staked out so we can really understand the impact of the tree, both to the crown as well as its root plate.
And I'm assuming that that what y'all looked at was there was not were there options studied, and was the result of all that is a loss of multiple units because of a parking space or a parking space going away? You're talking about losing 3 units per space.
Yes, the building would become unbuildable without a massive city subsidy, which we haven't asked for.
But there was no, was there, it looks like there would not be, but there was not an option to retain the units and parking spaces with a reconfiguration.
Respectfully, this building was the architectural equivalent of launching the SpaceX rocket. The care and time that went into fulfilling BAR requirements on a narrow, the building is not as big as it appears on the rendering. It is 6 stories, and I think George unintentionally misspoke. It's not 8, it's 6. And we don't go for architectural merit because we don't want to create precedent with the architectural board. We didn't think 7 stories held the architectural form of this as a leading edge into West Edge, which is 9 stories, and it should step itself up. There were so many considerations to doing this building that I don't think another development and architectural and engineering team could have pulled this off. Regarding the tree, we literally looked at every way to work with this tree, even try to save the tree effectively at whatever it would have taken to do it. We would have brought it to the Mayo Clinic of Trees and tried to deal with it. But we studied it. We promised the board we would go back and look at alternatives. We had it staked out the next day. The engineering company, with a 2-month wait, they were there the next day to stake this tree out exactly as this board wanted us to do, and Eric suggested.
And I just want to be clear, because I know Ms. Barton usually brings it up about city process again, but this project was in front of TRC on 12/3/2020. It was a different project at the time, layout, configuration, whatever. It was a pre-app application at the time, and staff provided comments that it appeared that there would be tree issues, variance required for encroachment, whatever. It then returned 8/3/2023 for first review. And again, staff provided comments that tree impact variance required. And then on 9/29/23 is when we received the application for the November 1 meeting. And then, of course, you all deferred it on November 1, and then we started this process with the stakeout and what have you. But so I don't know how BAR jumped in, because they're very careful with having all the zoning issues resolved. They typically come to me for whatever reason, COVID, Tory being, off site, but whatever. So in my opinion, it was very unfortunate that it got basically final BAR approval without having a zoning issue resolved.
Well, I guess my thought on that is I'm not saying I'm going to vote, but I'm not going to hold that against the applicant. because the applicant had no control over that. Right. So I'm not gonna hold that against them. Forward. They're all that.
I think it's very challenging. You had mentioned, was it, is it left rear corner? Stand on spring, left rear corner could be mitigation, or is it just on that little piece that's by Ashton?
If you put the site plan up. We're looking at three possibilities for mitigation. Here, we have green space, pedestrian space. We are happy to work with staff on the location of the mitigations, which is here. And we are also in the midst and under contract to acquire this piece from the city, which is landlocked, but we haven't taken title yet. We anticipate taking title. So we want to work as we have for decades hand in glove with city staff on the best placement that the landscape architect, we want to design a beautiful site. People who can design buildings like this are very proud of what they do. And we want to create a great landscape architecture. So right now, here, we anticipate taking title of this very quickly from the city. It's been approved by city council. We're in a contract to buy it, because we have to send them a wire and we get the title. Okay, this is the city's deep tunnel drainage sort of shaft here, and they're keeping this. And we even offered to work with the city and the Parks Department to create a hardscape and movable benches when they have to get a crane in here to do that. So if the trees are here, it would still be visible from Spring Street, but if we put it here, which is a great spot, when we take title, we're happy to open up discussion as a collaborative venture with the city, as we have done for decades, and we continue to do on all of our projects.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Questions?
Okay, so they're. Yeah, I'm just gonna throw something out.
2.5 inches per tree.
Doing that calculation right now, so.
With 23, if it was 75%. 9 trees, 2.5 inches.
4 inch trees.
Yeah, I think, if I may speak, sorry to interrupt. I think we'd like to do larger trees. I don't want to plant 9 2.5-inch trees. I think a 4-inch or 6-inch caliber trees would have a more beneficial instant impact. And you know, we actually talked about even doing like 30 inches of trees. I think you know, if that lot is acquired, maybe it's, you know, 4 6-inch trees or something like that. I think we could fit 2 large trees on the acquired lot and maybe 2 large trees at the back end of the lawn on Ashton Street, and then that would give public on both Spring and Ashton Street new trees that will continue to grow for decades.
What's the required amount of inches to be determined?
By ordinance, it's
75%.
22.5.
Yes, 23 inches.
I'm gonna make a motion.
Okay,
That's not gonna be popular. I make a motion, we move to approve with requiring 30 inches of canopy trees planted on site.
all right. Is there any discussion on that motion, or is there a second to that motion?
Second.
We have a motion. Spartan. Approval with 30 inches of replacement. On site. Seconded by. Fuji. Any discussion on that, or
Just a question that the no tree bank.
No treatment.
vote? Maybe we just do it each person, so start with Number two, Mr. Caroline.
I'm in favor.
In favor.
And I'll say nay. So, but you are approved 3-1. Thank you.
And we have no problem with the 30 inches. I think that's a great benefit to the tree and to the city at large and good compromise. Thank you.
And George can work with Eric on how to
Go with the man.
do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So was there a variance? Moving right along. The speed of sound. B1 is 651 Magnolia Road, West Ashley, TMS 418-10-00005, zoned SR2. Request the variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of one grand tree. The owner is John Patrick Barber and applicant is Barry Cohen. Eric.
Making a trip out to West Ashley at the corner of Magnolia and Sycamore. That was the application, sorry. Variance test explanation. You would not think it, but it is a lot of record. That's it reads as a side yard to the lot to the right. Zoned SR2. Basically covered up with canopy trees. These trees sit and reside on the property line along Sycamore. So existing condition from street view is there's the house, there's kind of like the side yard. Property pins right at that left column at the gate, and then it runs perpendicular to Magnolia. You can see the trees along Sycamore. This is before they cleaned up the briars and underbrush. It looks much cleaner today. Actually, the neighbor took down that fence along his driveway. Live oaks. Site plan, a modest house, 2-story on this lot. Requiring SR2 fronts, 25 front, 25 rear, 9 and 9 on your sides. You can see that row of trees is not in the right of way, but they almost appear to be right of way edge trees. 25-inch live oak right on the 9-foot setback line. Circled there. Photos by the applicant. So he is standing in the street, basically taking this photo on Sycamore. And the tree has a significant lean and arch. Here's city photos, a view to the south. So you can see the row. This one's kind of off the row and then really arches over into the yard. Both photos there, and then there it is there. And the arch is such that I don't think you could maybe even get a roof on a 1-story without hitting and requiring the removal of the tree. This is an arborist letter here, 45-degree lean stated. Staff recommends approval with the condition to plant 25 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the lot in the form of 2.5-inch live oaks to be planted on the lot. Make a contribution to the city's street tree program in the form of $590. That's another 2 trees to be planted in the vicinity. Must study shifting the rear patio to the east and moving the house back just a tad to avoid the 22-inch oak that's in front. I must arrange a meeting with a certified arborist on site to discuss the construction of the driveway between the 2 live oaks and submit a driveway detail and then a landscape plan for staff removal. So if you go back to the site plan, I think it does make sense that the driveway is off Sycamore versus because it would be so close to the intersection and would require further demolition of that screen wall and the wrought iron, which I think is quite nice and in character with the neighborhood. So, but these two trees, the 43 and the 2720, we'd have to meet to just figure out how to scrape the organics off and get a gravel driveway in. And the patio, if you could shift that maybe to the east, the other corner of the house, and just slide back a little bit, that 22-inch live oak has the same kind of character with the arch. Just a little cheap, not too much, because we don't want it to fall too far off of Magnolia and be kind of add a character with the row of homes there.
All right, Eric, thank you. Is there anybody present that is against this application? The applicant present.
Good evening. My name is Barry Cohn. We are very sensitive to the trees of this site. That's part of the beauty of it. This tree is just leans so far when you're there, you feel a safety issue first and foremost. We believe that the arborist report is very accurate in the sense that the roots are compromised. We believe that this tree is also being impacted by the significant growth of the trees around it. So that removal of this tree will allow those trees to thrive, and overall the site will be better for it. We don't feel like there's any public loss. I think that the tree removal will allow the site to remain pristine and look beautiful for years to come. So we respectfully ask for your approval in this request. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else present that's in favor that'd like to be heard? You're opposed, it's your turn.
I promise to be quick. I'm a project manager, so that one's gonna kill me. So I'm Caitlin. I actually live at 24 Apollo Road across the street. I was gonna have my two neighbors with me as well, but they have toddler boys, so that's a challenge. Just wanted to mention that during the sales process, my parents were actually interested in the property, and it was very clearly stated by the real estate agent that that lot that was kind of the side yard that's part of that other property was pretty much unbuildable because of the beautiful oak trees that were there. So it was really surprising to see that blue sign pop up in the past week where I was like, wait a second, like it was pretty much sold-ish when you're walking the property with this agent that like nothing would be possible. So I think that's like just a tough thing as someone who's like a regular citizen looking at a home and is like, oh, my parents could live here. Cool, we'll use the side yard as a side yard. It's no big deal. We don't care about development. And as soon as the developer gets their hands on it, it immediately goes to, let's see if we can chop something down to build something that's a 2-story unit on a corner lot that really is just part of the side yard that this guy happened to buy an extra lot for. So that's incredibly frustrating to see happen over and over again. You probably noticed like La Landra in this neighborhood has had a lot of new development, not to call out Empire Properties, but they have done quite a number over on the La Landra Street in the neighborhood. So I'm just getting a little tired of seeing things getting chopped up into bits, into brand new shiny structures that don't do anything to enhance the Charleston character of the neighborhood. I do want to also call out that with those storms this summer, 26 Apollo lost a 30-inch oak tree that fell on their house. These trees did not move. Also around the corner at 7 Anita, they had a 40-inch huge tree go. None of these trees moved. I have a grand oak on my lot that I actually applied to have grand oak status, and that Live Oak Society come out and verify it. It's been struck by lightning. I built around it. I have a pool in my backyard. I added a pool house. I did not come here and ask, can you please let me chop this huge grand oak off my property because it's inconvenient to me. I think the part that's really a struggle is that this lot was clearly advertised as a single family home that happened to have extra lot space. And now per my expectations, this other lot is going to be chopped off, turned into a 2-story modern-esque unit, just for profit and not because it's going to enhance the neighborhood. It's just yet one more thing to put up in the space. So just wanted to at least come and put that out there that like, while the tree may look according to this arborist to be completely not okay, its canopy is beautiful. It survived all the storms this summer. There's really no reason to be going this route other than straight profit. So that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you.
Is this community governed by an HOA?
Unfortunately, no, we are a non-HOA space. So everybody gets to have an opportunity to just do what they want.
But you have a neighborhood association, is that accurate?
We may, I haven't really had a lot of community space in that. I haven't, it's one of those, you go on nextdoor.com and you kind of hear stuff, but like Avondale, we're not really considered Avondale on that street space.
Right.
Avondale's closer
Mhm.
to the triangle bar. So we kind of feel like a lost unit a little bit because East Oak Forest and West Oak Forest are very clearly delineated, but our little quadrant is kind of a mismatch. So.
So what
Elaborate on
neighborhood
that,
associations with fall into work,
to elaborate that, this is not, it just
or is it
Down
mostly
the-
county?
down the center of Sycamore is the boundary for Magnolia Neighborhood
Okay.
Council. This doesn't have a neighborhood council.
That's why I don't know who it is. There we go. Learned something
That's
today.
why it was advertised West Ashley,
Okay,
put our,
okay.
our neighborhood councils on the
Yep,
agenda.
yep.
You have an opportunity for rebuttal if you would like.
Sure, I'll just say I can appreciate her sentiments. This tree does lean significantly. It is a danger. It can fall at any time, whether somebody's car is parked there or somebody's children are playing in the side yard. Again, I stand by the arborist report. Our design is as least impactful as we can possibly make it. And when we feel that the arborist report does state that the tree is a safety hazard and a danger. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
What was the arborist
We
on
will,
again?
it was, put the arborist report up there. You go. We will close the public portion of the application and be open to the board for discussion. There wasn't a, Eric, would you grade the tree?
Run through and where it's, can you go back to the report?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So did they have to get a variance when they subdivided this lot?
It was a pre-existing lot, right? It was.
It has not been subdivided.
Okay, it was two lots that somebody owned both lots.
Yep. Here's it dates back to, I was just looking at 1939.
The original plat. We feel like at some point Sycamore Drive might have been enlarged a little bit because it does taper, but we can find the proof of that on the docket. It's an odd front corner.
So legally, they have every right to build the house on it.
It's zoned SR2.
And those trees unfortunately were all planted too close together. Initially. My opinion.
Well, they're reaching in every direction.
Excuse me?
They're building in the original footprint, 40 by 40.
I don't think there was ever a house there.
But there's that shed, it looks like, right?
That's the adjacent carport thing that you see here. See that little white,
Yep.
Okay,
that garage?
All right.
Property line runs right down adjacent to that.
okay, so there was no house there.
There was no,
But
So,
was it owned by the same, it looks like it was obviously owned by the people that owned because the brick columns go through the whole frontage, right?
Yeah.
So they sold
Treated
that,
it
they
as a
sold the
double
single
lot.
family house and they just used the other lot.
so, Eric, we put the site plan up one more time. So I think my initial issue would be that when I look at the shape of the house that's put on there. It doesn't look like there was a whole lot of thought to the conditions of the site. It was, there's a footprint of something I maybe have and bam, stick it on there. Versus what if the house pushed and there was a rear yard variance that was asked for, so it pushes a little further away from Sycamore, if it pushes back a little bit past to, and it seems like there could be some design work that's done. I do agree. I think the driveway off of Sycamore makes sense. Where the house could be reduced in size, or could become a little, something in the math. It seems like there's more that could be done. Obviously, though, I can't tell from this. I can look at the picture and see that tree is really pushing into the property, but it would have been nice if Mr. Nance would have given us that canopy and we could see that, oh, that tree is going to where the two-story is, or that tree is really, before the PIA proposed. It seems like it could be saved.
Well, I
A
guess
lot could be worked around, and maybe a variance asked for something else other than tree removal.
so our tree protection area for that.
25 inches, only 12 foot,
Yeah,
but
so
that,
it's 12 feet, which would go back to the site plan. Please. So that really, right, you're 12 feet, if this is 9.2. Right? Which is basically the front of my pen. So that's 9.2, so 12 would be like somewhere in here, right? I mean, that's 12 feet there. So you take that, you know, then you could do a long skinny, but I guess the question would be is, it's still leaning into it. Because the limb's that long,
Right, we don't.
regardless,
have-
even if you made a long skinny.
Lane is so far over, it, even a one story would not be able to be built on.
And then I look and I say, you know, there's the 29, 22, 25, the other stuff that's in there, it isn't, there is no negative.
And Eric was
Impact on that
requesting,
is-
yeah, Eric was requesting moving it back a little bit to give that 22-inch more space. Is one of the conditions.
it has almost as significant lean. You can see it in the foreground here on the left, it arches, it's got a little higher arch, but the branches do droop.
So put that picture again here. So that white, go back up one more. That white shed is the neighbor's garage.
Yep.
And that
It's right
garage-
on the property line,
That's right on it.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, so trees.
Is that show right there, that adjacent garage?
Yeah, it's
Comes almost all the way across to touch that.
right. Yeah, so I don't need his thing, because that canopy is.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Wrong,
it's
yeah.
the whole, it's the entire house. Regardless of whether it's long, thin or square.
Okay. Now, if you go to your conditions, Eric. So 25 caliber inches,
In the form of 2 trees on the lot, I think the front yard,
so that's 5.
east could do one, maybe in the back near the neighbor.
Is the
And then
590?
That's 5 inches, and then 2 590 is another, 2 2.5 inch trees, another 5, so total 10 inches up to 25.
So why wouldn't the contribution be the other 20 inches?
Because I have done that with you all before, and you all say that it's just not right for a single family house, but
No, we have actually said that, but that's usually when it's a homeowner, but I guess, Mr. Barber's the homeowner or the property owner.
I think I would say adjust this item 1 and say the 2 on site and then 20 inches into the street.
Well, I personally feel like it doesn't have to be live oaks either. I mean, it could be live oaks, but it could be something else, a native, you know, large canopy or, you know, just for some diversity in case, you know, crepe myrtles have a disease going around, you know, that happens with species. So a little diversity doesn't hurt, but live oaks are great. I feel like it could be flexible if they're, you know,
Yes,
taxodium or something.
yes, the way I look at it is the lot is legally allowed to be built on.
That's right.
Even if I don't like the shape and form that's being put on there, that tree with the severe lean pushes pretty much from property line to property line. If the others can be saved, take that one out, but I do think I would say 100%. 2 on site, the other 20 in the street tree.
Inch wise.
What then?
You're saying,
So I agree with item 1, but item 2 would be make a contribution for the 20 inches that remain to go into the street tree program. Instead of 2.
are you doing the math on that or could it be phrased in the term of 20 inches? Your
I think
additional
it could
20
be, it could
inches.
be 2, 2.5 live oaks on site and the remainder to be put into the street tree program. Strike item 2.
so that ends up being 8 trees times 295. So you're looking at $2,360.
That's a drop in the bucket. If you're looking at building a house. For that house.
Your
it's the
concern,
equivalent of
Joel,
$1.
your concern is getting too many trees out or there's not enough.
No.
The plan is gonna be detrimental?
No, my concern is I don't see why we would give the credit and not require the full replacement. It's a live oak tree. It's inch for inch. The homeowner should say, yep, I get to take this out. I can build my house.
Okay.
And the cost to build my
Then it's
house
Gonna cost me more.
is gonna be $2,300 extra dollars.
But in the past, haven't we? We reduced it, particularly when it's the homeowner.
Yes, usually when it's commercial, we'll stick to the inch per inch, and we have relaxed that sometimes with single
Not
family
always, but not always.
ownership, but not always.
I mean, I guess-
They also could plant slightly larger trees on site to make up some of their inches. I mean, there are different ways to do that.
I mean, I guess I see the tree as severely restricting. A use that the property owner has, and so. And I know it's not penalizing the owner. But in this situation, you know, I would be interested in giving them somewhat of a break because. You know, it's really the position of the tree or the growth of the tree. That's my 2 cents.
Any questions? Make a motion. One, three, go.
Hold on, I'm doing some math.
I let her do it, since she's doing the figure. I wasn't even following what they were asking.
I agree with, how they have clearly they have the legal right to build on the property. You know, the tree restricts their use of the property. I understand the 1-to-1. But I think it's maybe a little bit punitive in a single family situation. We could split the difference. And, you know, ask for $1,000 contribution to the street tree fund. In addition to the planting on the site. It's a happy medium, perhaps. Okay.
So, is that your motion?
I'll make a motion now. I make a motion, we move to approve with $1,000 to the staff recommendations, with number 2 being changed to $1,000 to the city street tree fund.
Is there a second on that?
A second.
Mr. Calvin. Okay, so motion for approval, modifying item 2 to $1,000. All in favor of that motion?
I am.
All in favor?
Aye, in favor. It's opposed, it's approved 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you for your careful consideration, especially after the last one you went through. I'm just tired of it.
Go with it.
I
have to step up.
Yes, that- okay, fantastic. Thank you. A chance. We're here.
I told my husband to go ahead and, oh, he's waiting for it. Wasn't that nice of him? You better.
It's forever now. Early tonight.
All right.
One row.
So Eric, why, the one that was deferred again, why wasn't it old business?
Because they made a new application.
Okay,
They changed the application and paid additional fees. And
so that doesn't count.
so that's why it was in B.
So could they have done that? Well, I guess they can't withdraw it. Could they have withdrawn it and reapplied?
They essentially did reapply.
But I mean, could they have done that again? instead of
That's
asking.
oh, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yep. Good point.
All right, so our next item on the agenda would be item B2. That is 25 Trash Street, Charlestown, TMS 458-1301-040, zoned SR5. Request a variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of one grand tree.
Okay, taking a trip south abroad. This is the application. Applicant is Julia. I assume you're with Julia's office, but I was hoping I didn't see her out there. So this is a very unique site. I visited this tree, I don't know how many years ago. The owners, being the Campbells, just wanted me to look at this tree. I think maybe there was some dialogue beginning with their neighbor. Because once I got there, I recalled being in that backyard garden. Years accelerated. So that's just the zoning on South of Trad. Backyard, small, quaint garden. Neighbor at 23 has a very small, quaint garden. The issue is, this is the position of the tree. You can see in the photos on the left that the tree is applying pressure to that 6-foot brick wall. And they have it stabilized with 2x4s and 2x6s. We asked that they do investigative work in lieu of tearing up number 25's yard with air spade. The 23 neighbors agreed for the wall to be basically disassembled, or not demolished. I don't want to use that word, but carefully removed. So Bartlett looked at the tree. The health of the tree is overall good. It does have a codominant leader. I'd say that's probably 15 to 20 feet in the air. And actually that tree has a rod in it, a cable that somebody put in years ago. So, you know, that's the condition. This is the wall. This is looking down the wall. You can see how much off plumb it is. And the stabilizers. It's kind of unique in the sense that it has these panels. So they were able to remove panels and they got into these roots, pretty sizable roots right up against the wall. So we debated, we discussed many alternatives. The neighbors have come together. This is a letter from Joanne Cable at 25. She's willing to have the tree removed, repair the wall, get everybody happy. And staff recommends approval to plant one 2.5-inch caliber in that very small rear garden. She's willing to do that and make a contribution. Again, I used two 2.5-inch trees to come up with 590. Just a landscape plan to show that the trees in somewhere in her garden, whether it needs redesign or somewhere further away from the wall.
All right, thank you, Eric. Is there anybody present that is opposed to this application? Applicant is here.
I'm just representing them, but I think that both neighbors get along well.
State your name.
Sorry, Haskins Howard. And both neighbors would like to see the tree go on because they have obviously the wall between them that it's about to fall over, and they'd like to save the wall. And we tried to save the wall, save the tree, and as the arborist states, it's within a year. It says something in the arborist report that it could fall or have failure. That's what stated. So I think it would benefit. It's a small backyard with this giant tree that's somewhat dangerous, but I think that both neighbors would like to have a tree there.
Yes, thank you. Since no one is opposed, we'll close the application to the public. If you open to the board discussion.
So normally when we have a tree issue like this, we talk about whether it makes sense to do a beam over the roots, et cetera, being a magnolia. I think that that probably is making that different than if it were a live oak or or an elm or something of that ilk. So you talked about all those strategies, because normally we say try root pruning
Right.
and try to bridge it or do something else. And so that was all discussed.
Yes, it was.
I think you look at that picture and it's like trunk and then
Well,
tree. and-
magnolias also, their roots are super sensitive and they, are close to the surface, and there's stuff that you can't do to them that you could do to a different plant material. So
I'm in food, I guess. Eric, what is the required mitigation on that? Is it 75%?
No, this one's a category 1 tree, so it'd be 100%.
What y'all decide.
So what would that number be?
So it's 20, size is 25 inches. So we put 1 tree, 2.5, 23. It's basically the same thing as last one. 23, 2,500 bucks.
Uniform. Well, does anybody have a problem with removal? I see it as a
No.
structural safety issue ultimately.
So certainly that wall's it's gonna fall.
And then you can't remedy it like you might be able to, because, when I first looked at this, I was thinking, well, maybe we could talk about doing something physical with the wall, but sounds like that wouldn't work. So I'll make a motion, we move to approve of staff recommendations, and we change, I believe it's number B to the $1,000 to be uniform and fair to single family homeowners today.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. Staff conditions, approval with staff conditions, modifying item 2 to $1,000 for the street tree program. All in favor? Aye.
Favor.
Any opposed? It's approved. Thank you. Next item will be item B3. 1598 Palmcrest Drive, Headquarters Island, TMS 34607000021, zoned SR4. Requested variance from section 54.327 to allow the removal of 5 grand trees.
Okay, so I've modified the request to 3 grand trees. Based on site inspection and working with the applicant. Here's the application. This is a small little section of Headquarters Island that's kind of its own little pod of houses. It reads very different than all the other very large lots. So you can see that this is a corner, if you will, odd shaped. Zoned SR4, totally treed over, primarily with live oak. Few sweet gum. This is the survey that was submitted. So you see triangular shape, and then I blew it up. So the surveyor put round circles. We weren't clear as to whether they were connected, not connected. So my colleague went out and did her investigative work, came back with some findings. Her numbers are in blue. It was kind of hard to, get your variance in there, even though it's a very small lot. So I went out and prepped for the meeting, and I would declare these as the official city verifications. So 6 grand trees on the lot total, 1 on the property boundary with palm crest, the other 4 within the boundary. And again, we use physically and visibly connected at the base. So then I had the applicant put the protection zones on to give us a clear idea of the site plan. So this is based on the total diameters. And then the house. So you have an HOA, SR4. I can't remember the exact setbacks under SR4, but HOA has 25 foot across the front, both headquarters as well as Palm Crest. So that shrinks down your lot. You got the drainage easement. So staff is prepared to recommend the removal of 3. So number 1, number 2, and number 5. I feel number 1 is just too close in the crown to go vertical. 3, I'll show you a picture of. I'm hopeful to work with the owner, the designer, to do spot piers and some limited pruning to get an arborist involved. And then number 6, we need to deal with I think it's the appropriate thing for that little pod of or its own little, like, I don't know if it doesn't, I don't think it has its own HOA, but it has a sign out and it's called its own little cul-de-sac kind of little hamlet of homes, very different from the rest of the island. So an arborist to get involved to work with that driveway. I think it's appropriate to be that far from the intersection, and it's in keeping with the. So here's the number 1. It leans in. Don't mind the stakeout. That was an earlier rendition of the house, but it is that close to the steps. So I think it'd just be significantly impacted. Number 2. Number 3. This is the one that's going to be saved outside the house. You can see that one stem has a big scar in it. And so we'll get the house staked out officially, and then work with an arborist to figure out how to preserve that one on the back rear corner. This is along the drainage easement. This is in that house, number 5. And then this is the tree. It's going to lean away slightly from the driveway. The driveway would be to the left of this photo. It's lower than the roadbed, but I think we'll be very successful with an arborist on board to lay some geotextile down and just kind of do. A lot of the driveways are pervious and other materials, so we'll get creative there. So with that said, staff recommends approval. Must work to preserve tree number 3 with a certified arborist on the team. Use spot piers, corner of the building, and have a meeting on site with the city contractor. The certified arborist must plant 101. That's 3 trees totaled up at 100%. But canopy trees on the lot in the form of 4 2.5-inch trees make a contribution to the city street tree program in the form of 590. Must use 4-foot chain link fence for tree protection barricades and have it inspected prior to construction. Must have a certified arborist develop a tree preservation plan for trees 3, 4, and 6, and provide a landscape plan for staff review and approval.
All right, Eric, thank you. Is there anybody present that is opposed? Applicants present would like to be heard.
Hey, hello, my name is Gene Forney. Mr. Odessa lives in Charlotte. Worked with him to stake the stakings that you see in the photos. He and I did those together personally. I hope to be the builder on this project. I can say that he is intimately involved and would like to preserve, and that's why he bought in headquarters. He would like to preserve as much of the treescape as possible. He is caught between what's not shown in any of the pictures. If I could show right here, he's got the point. Am I on the right street? Yeah, the little drive that goes down there. The little neighborhood's called the Point. He has their sign easement on his property right here. So he's caught with that already, naturally landscaped and beautified for the HOA. His neighbors on that little enclave of streets have approved. And he did have to design his porch and steps to meet this line already. So he's worked extensively with that HOA, and his neighbors have approved the site plan as it's drawn. He just didn't know he was gonna run into the barriers of the tree removal with the city. But we will say the folks around him, they gave him approval, the HOA approval to build.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that it's a gated community, so Google Street View didn't drive down there, but I spoke with Ryan Odessa. And I asked him, I said, is all that stuff on your property? I mean, there's a sign, there's a very beautiful
Is
landscape.
it literally on the property or is it in the right of way?
No, it's in the property.
It's 25 feet in from the edge of pavement?
Well, I don't know if it's all the signs, like, see that little mound in the kind of the
Yeah,
contour?
yeah. with the
That's kind of
8.9
like
or
a
6.9
mound,
in it.
that's like a mounded landscape area.
This one here.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
yeah.
It's right there.
That was in.
But technically, okay, we have to close it.
She might have taken a picture and it might be after she takes pictures of her signs. So I don't know, but I was like thrown off because I thought this tree, the number one tree didn't seem right, but then I got to thinking, well, that's the perception was that I would assume that stuff was in the right of way, but it's on the lot, I think. And that's what that little mound is about, that contour. It's kind of mounded up in the signs on it.
Yes, so we can, if there's no one opposed, we'll close this application to the public, we'll open it to the board for discussion and questions.
Okay, so if this was, the HOA setbacks are different than the cities there at the corner.
He's got the 225-foot setbacks.
So I guess my question is, it looks like no thought whatsoever was put into how the house was designed with the trees. And my question would be, why wouldn't you go to the HOA if you bought the lot because you wanted the oak trees? Why would you go to the HOA and look at either, putting your driveway in off of, on one side of the signage and whatnot? I just think that, I just think that the house is hugely horizontal and there was a way to look at it. And the driveway is an encroachment, and that's not on here, is it? Oh, yes, it is. No, it's not.
Well, my condition is I'm working with an arborist. I have some leeway there. So.
So when you go back to the little bit larger view, we're talking about one, 2, and 5.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of seems to me like, if in the city, what would your corner setbacks be on that?
So SR4, I'm not real familiar. I'd have to look it up on the, right. You have it? What's?
It would be 9 feet on the south/west side and 3 feet on the north/east. And there's no front setback requirement in the SR4 district.
Thank you.
The HOA setbacks are.
Yeah,
Restrictive.
yeah. Because you
Because
could,
you could say, hey, we'll take number one out, shove this house
You
close
could-
to the
absolutely.
street, push it
Yeah,
down towards where they
absolutely.
put their
they
sign.
kept that forever
But you
trees.
can't do that because the HOA says 25 feet, we want to maintain a certain.
You can see how they have all their little, they're all meeting that 25
Yeah,
front probably.
Yeah, these are all smaller lots than what is on the rest of
Right,
headquarters.
oh
by
yeah,
quite a bit.
much smaller.
Yeah, they're like,
This is
they're
point-
patio homes
This
almost,
is
right?
0.2 acres. Quarter of an acre with $6 grand on it. You're dealing with, I mean, the canopies are all every which way, the trees were competing for light. I believe it meets the test.
I would agree. I think if we can save 634. It's a step in the right direction.
I agree, I agree.
Then maybe adjust that $1,000 mitigation and stay consistent.
Yeah, I was thinking about what you said, Amanda, in terms of a different orientation, but I don't think you're gonna be able to say. It's still gonna have an issue.
Yeah, you
You'd
might,
take
you
at least
might,
two out.
yeah, you you might have been able to say 5, right? If we,
Didn't have
You
you
pull-
pull setback or that one. That comes out.
yeah, I mean, if you had the 9 feet, then you could do, you could be way closer to the corner, and then you could walk in your front door into the sign.
Now we're longer.
Longer, skinnier
Yeah,
house.
just have your stairs, right?
Next to the sign.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have jurisdiction over it, but I don't know if the ARB does.
Oh, and technically the HOAs take legal precedence, isn't that accurate with anything like that, so.
So with the point brought up, then we could also request that 9 grants outside of the footprint. Say.
Oh, the 9 non-grants.
So like the 8, 10, the 12, 12, 18 back there, that then those remain. Might just add that to the motion. So staff conditions and add saving the 9 grants outside.
Okay, who wants to make a motion?
You put the recommendations out. Thousands. Only things they've done, grants.
Yeah, like keep the 8, 10, 12, 12, and 18.
We know where those are.
Yeah.
They're okay.
It would just be all, you just say all 9 grants outside the footprint to remain.
And protected though.
Yeah, yeah, otherwise they'll park equipment all over them.
All right, I'm gonna try the motion. Can I see the recommendations? All right, make a motion for approval with staff recommendations with the addition that the non-protected trees outside of the footprint of the building are protected. And the item 3 is the contribution of $1,000 to the street tree program.
So Mr. Webb with the motion, second to his motion. All right, Calvin. Discussion on the motion. Go to a vote. All in favor?
I in favor.
Aye in favor. Any opposed? None are opposed. It's approved. Thank you for your time this evening. Unanimous 4-0.
They close the public. Can I ask just a quick question?
Yes.
Sure.
Is there any variance with the 4-inch chain link? Would you be opposed to like split rail that's more attractive for the neighbors? It's just as sturdy. People can't go through it or drive around it.
No, I really need 4-foot chain link fence because it's a size, modest house or appropriate sized house, but is it gonna be, any masonry on it or anything? What's the materials, exterior materials?
Just cement party board.
Party board, yeah. I'd really like to stay with 4-foot chain link fences. I mean, you can recycle it somehow.
Oh, no, I wouldn't worry about the cost. I'm just.
It's not permanent. This is
Oh, I
temporary.
know, I know, but a lot of the HOAs, when I go and tell them that, they want me to put up split rail. Like it's a requirement in Oldfield.
Right.
I've got to do split rail. I cannot use fence. They don't wanna look at it for
Right.
9 months.
Well, yeah, well, tell them the city's a little different. 9 months, it will come and go quick.
Chain link,
Mm,
chain link.
Please, yes.
And then the other, with $1,000, is there any possibility of him planting more on his property?
If you can find room.
If he can find room? Okay, we'll work with Eric. on
Yeah,
that.
work with Eric on that.
To do that? Okay.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Who made the,
Let's, Jeff made the
Jeff.
motion, Calvin did the second.
Who did the-
Calvin.
Calvin?
I'm gonna put a tree by the side.
Thank you.
Right, right, and get the HOA. to
All right, so our next item is item B4, 715 Yopon Drive, Tewksbury Farm Road. Kane Hoy, the TMS numbers are 263-0004006, 007, 042-046, and 053. Is zoned DR-12 and SR1. Request a variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 3 grand trees. Request a special exception from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 1 grand tree. Request a variance from section 54-330 to allow a reduced impervious setback near the bases of 6 grand trees. Eric.
Okay, so to begin, the application has been modified by staff because having worked with the applicant, they made changes. So the request for a variance is down to 1 grand tree. Special exception remains the same for 1 grand tree. And then we strike the variance to allow a reduced impervious setback near bases of 6 because they moved things to not require that. And I'll explain that as I move forward. So here's the application. This is this shows originally 1 live oak, 1 willow oak, 1 water oak, and 1 maple. So we're down to a water oak and the willow oak. The 23.5 they listed, and it was confirmed to be 23.5, so it's not grand. And the maple was confirmed that if you take out the 3.5 inch stem and you calculate the 6 and above, that's 23 inches on the button, so that's not grand. So we're dealing with the double willow and the special exception water oak, and then all the variances to reduce the impervious impact, or the impact as they stated here. They worked with me to avoid those. The site is this site, or these are the parcels. This does not reflect the most recent property line adjustment, but if you were to draw a line across the SR1 yellow portion, we're dealing with the 2 orange BR12s and the SR1 as the property boundaries. So basically the orange and the yellow there, SR1 abutting RR1, and then other residual properties in Berkeley County. Yupon Drive is a dirt road. You have Route 41, obviously heavily traveled, and then Tuxbury Farm Road was dirt. The county just recently paved that. The property combined will be under the existing zoning, will be a single family attached home products, fee simple lots, and then a detached single family product on the SR1 cul-de-sac, and then a U-shaped jug handle connecting 41 with Tuxbury. The 2 trees are shown. The willow oak is the one on the sidewalk, and the water oak is the one back in the point. The other, they were originally impacting the 2 trees on the bottom right. They were putting the drain pipe between the trees. They shifted that. They increased the island for the next yellow tree moving to the left in the split road. They increased that island. They moved shift the lot lines on the top blue tree to the north, and that's an HOA lot. The orange tree, they moved further from it with a drainage easement and pipe. So it's near that pond, but it's on an HOA. The closest tree, which we made just a slight adjustment, but it's better, and I'll show that tree in a minute, is the other blue grade B tree. It's a live oak. It's going to be very much near existing grade because the Route 41 is so close there, and they shifted that bulb on the cul-de-sac. So there's the list. 2 removals. Kind of blow up. So tree number 4 is the water oak, double stem. Or no, that's to be in the island. I'm sorry, that's I can't read it. My eyes are bad.
It looks like it says number 4, and it's in the plans for below it, right?
Yeah.
So that's the island.
That's still water.
Yeah. And then we have the willow oak, which is in the front yard on the sidewalk. And then tree number 7. I think my variance right again here. There's the B grade tree in the HOA. I think they mislabeled this when they resubmitted it. There's the number 4. Go back to this list. So we're dealing with number 4 is the water oak, and number 5 is the willow oak. So I think this one here Oh, yeah, that's number 4. That's the water oak.
So,
Like, beating the heck out of you.
so 7, 5, and 7 were our removals,
Right.
So, as we had encroachments before for.
Yeah, there's the willow oak for sure.
Yeah.
So 5 and 7.
Yeah, there's the water oak.
So the 4 and 5 or 5 and 7.
5 and 7.
4 is the one with the tree in the island.
Yeah, they changed the island to go at 4.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm reading the chart wrong. 5 and 7. 7's the one. Yep, there we go. There's the water oak there. Then there's the willow oak. 5, 7. There's the, you can see how the existing building is so close to this live oak, so we're going to have notes on how that building's demolished, and then the cul-de-sac will be outside of its protection zone. So with all that said, sorry about that, must plant 58.5 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the project site, use 4-foot chain link fences, tree protection barricades, must have a certified arborist prune and treat the grand trees to be preserved, and provide a landscape plan for staff review and approval.
All right. Thank you.
Eric, was the denial, is that because that's NA with what the adjustments? It said denied for the pervious setback up top.
That's right. Where did I have that?
It was up top, right above.
So I withdrew that request. I was originally going to deny it, but then I forgot to strike that.
Okay.
Because they made all the adjustments.
Give you a little heart attack there, huh?
Oh, man. I forgot to take that out, but so if you go back to this, the application has been adjusted for 1 grand tree requiring a variance, that's the willow oak, the water oak special exception, and request to reduce is struck, it's withdrawn because they made the adjustments. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Eric. Just ask the question, is there anybody present that is opposed to this application?
Don't look at me.
And, the applicant, would you like to give us a presentation?
Sure, thank you. Michael Kane with Toll Brothers, 124 Verde Boulevard, Suite 203, Greenville, South Carolina. So I appreciate y'all's time. I know it's been a long night. I'll kind of cut to it. Eric kind of gave you all historical information. So since we submitted, we've been working with staff to, again, make it a better project long-term and everything. And we appreciate, we had the site visit with him and Mike Russell with Natural Productions. So they have been our certified arborist. We are down to those 2 removals. We feel like that's the most efficient way and approach to this project to make it work. And we feel like the other trees do bring a sense of character to the site. And working with our engineer, we've been able to adjust some utilities on site for Eric too as well. And we've been in correspondence. So where we are today, we're very happy to see that we went from so many removals before down to 2. I would also like to bring up, Eric did mention in his presentation, tree number 10 has the existing structure on there. So y'all kind of saw that photo. We will work with staff through that as that existing structure will get demoed. So that way it takes away and we will then have a better pervious coverage basically in that area. So, going back to the encroachments, we're hoping that this live oak has a long-term sustainable future for the site itself and presents a character for the site. So happy to answer any questions. We would ask for your consideration for the approval tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm good for that.
Close the application to the public and be open to the board for discussion. Questions?
So you come back to the plan? Okay. Okay, calibration.
I'll say thank you. I think it's great that I worked with staff to reduce the requests.
Yeah, and the 58.5 caliper inches is outside of any required buffer trees.
Questions of the applicant?
Good.
Yeah, me too. I don't see how. I don't see how you can design around those other two.
No, I think that, if the size of that development, Grand Tree's been saved. Looks reasonable.
Okay, make a motion. We approve the staff recommendations.
I'll second.
Right, so a motion for approval by Amanda, seconded by Mr. Webb. Any discussion or questions? Motion. Well, let's go for vote then. All in favor?
And
I in favor.
Opposed? Approved. And I be patience today.
All right, thank you.
so, were we on YouTube tonight?